Welcome to the Judgment Free Zone. You've downloaded the Alcohol-Free Marriage and More podcast, episode 62 for September 18th, 2023.
Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
Recorded live from the cornfields of Central Illinois, you're listening to the Alcohol-Free Marriage podcast with Matt and Amy. Come and learn and share a journey with two former craft beer enthusiasts who went from daily drinkers to teetotalers and basically never lost their love for their life together.
Hey, a freak show!
Well, hello there, children. Welcome back to your weekly freak show that is recorded live. I am Matt, along with the always lovely and probably has a way for you to breathe, Coach Amy. How are you, my love?
I have a way for you to breathe.
And breathe, or you need to do this, or there's always something. Or your PQ reps, or rub your fingers together and sit like this. I don't know. If you want a tip, Coach Amy always has a tip. So whatever's ailing you, look her up. Amy at jointherside.com.
I don't know if that's really, if you've got something ailing you,
There you go.
come see me. I don't know if that's...
It's crazy here in the podcast household this week, so good week for us to do an interview. We'll get to our interview in just a minute, but don't forget to like, subscribe, share this podcast with a friend, an enemy, a neighbor, a relative, whoever.
Enemy.
Doesn't matter. You know, maybe you don't like the podcast. Here, listen to this. I don't like you either, so
Yeah, and
it's
then...
an option. It all helps us, so no such thing as bad PR, kids.
Well, and if you are super curious and you're wanting to maybe just take a break from alcohol, October's a great month.
Because it rhymes.
Yep, and Sober October, and you can... we have a guide for you. It's our 5 o'clock somewhere alcohol-free edition. It's our 7 tips for taking a break from alcohol. We have that available to you. And then also...
At jointherside.com.
I was going to finish that up after I did this.
You can say it more than once. It's okay.
Yes. Okay. And then, or you can join Suzanne Nissen and I for our alcohol-free spirit experiment that starts actually on September 24th. I was going to say a week from today, a week from our recording this. So it starts, we are excited. We have, I think, we either have 8 or 10. I'm not sure.
Let's go with 10.
Yeah. So we have some newbies. We have some people who have decided to continue on with us. And this is our program where we look at all the reasons we drink, and then we look at all the reasons we've gotten to this point in our life, and then also look at all those thoughts and beliefs around it. And then we also add in what makes us different is we add in our faith into this program. So we would love you to join us. And then
that's at jointherside.com also. Right there at the top, there's a banner. Helping you out. Driving that traffic, Amy. You need SEO. You just need me saying it over and over.
There you
and
go.
over.
And then finally, I had an exciting morning. I'm getting ready to be a part of the Sober Summit, which is going to be a holiday themed.
Yes, you had to decorate for Christmas and everything.
I did. I put up a few little things, but this is going to be out. I think it's the first full weekend in November. I'll have dates coming soon for that, but very excited about being a part of that.
Very holiday-ish. I mean,
Yes.
like, Merry Christmas. I hear you on the recording, like, Merry Christmas. I'm like, what is she doing? I'm like, it's September. I'm like, I know we love the Hobby Lobby and the early Christmas stuff, but
And then he walks over and he's like, and she has Christmas up? What?
I'm like, all right, hold on. We
Where
need to have
are we?
We need
Where
a
are
decorating intervention here, people. I'm just saying.
However, we do have fall is up.
Fall is up. Well, it should be. It's middle of September, so that's
Fall's
fair.
up, and we did the outside.
Yes, we did.
You made me so happy.
I know. Amy loves it. I'm like, whatever. I mean, it looks nice. It does look nice. It doesn't strike me as something to actually do. So I appreciate it, and I'll do it. I just like, if I didn't do it, I'd probably be okay too. But it looks nice.
You just have that boring house.
And you have to rethink it because the house is a different color. What goes with the house now? I didn't even think about any of that, but that's just me. We're not doing a drink of the week this week, kids, but join us next week when we have the other 2 of our 4 Oktoberfests that we're highlighting. Next week will be Untitled Art and Athletic Brewing. If you want to find those ahead of time and join us as we drink it next week, you may do that. You can do that too. But
Oh my goodness, it's so good.
oh, they're all good.
All of them are. I mean,
Yeah.
we've come so far.
Oh, Yeah, from I think there was like what I say, like the one pumpkin one last year to none the year before that to 4 this year. So
Exactly.
I will say, Go Brewing. Don't forget to check out our link. Go Brewing for $5 off your first order. The link is in the description. But their can, their label definitely wins for a best label.
It looks awesome.
Yes,
very much gets you into the Halloween spirit.
Their can label game is on point.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
All right, Coach Amy, tell us about Paulette and our interview today.
Yes, well, today we're bringing you the interview with Paulette Kengg, and she is a 65-year-old. She's a Christian wife, mother, grandmother living in Texas. She is a retired award-winning editor and author of 4 books, and she recently wrote the book Spirit-Led Sobriety. And Paulette and her husband, they enjoy spending time with family, traveling. She enjoys reading, and you will often find her on scary rides at amusement parks. So I think that's pretty cool. And she also is really into go-kart racing.
Nice.
I know. Nice. I love it. When I grow up, I want to be just like Paulette.
You want to be a cool grandma too.
Yes. And so we are going to be diving into Paulette's story today, and we'll just go ahead and get to that interview now. All right. We are so excited. We have an author with us today, and the book is Spirit-Led Sobriety, and it's Paulette Kengg. And I just want everybody, you can see that. We will put that in there. I've ordered a copy for myself. I ordered a copy for my business partner. And
I thought you made a mistake when I opened the bag. There's just 3 copies.
3 copies. And I'm going to give it away as a giveaway in my small group program that I do as well. So, Paulette, thank you so much for coming on the Alcohol-Free Marriage and More podcast. And you and I have we've kind of sparked a really quick relationship. You and I started chatting through one of the Snake and Mind groups, and you asked if you could be on our podcast, and I'm like, well, let's get together and see what this is all about. And I started to read your book, and literally I read your book in a day. I just sat down and read it, and it's one of those where it was just a really compelling memoir. I love reading those types of books, but it was you have had quite the life. And I mean, really, you've got, I would just describe your story as that, you were a young woman who had, probably a rough childhood, and you persevered, and then living a life of a single mom, and then eventually finding the love of your life as well. So, and then intertwined in here, there was a lot of different obstacles that you had, and a conversation that you had with God that was not always, I think maybe you even said maybe not the nicest thing at times you might have been interacting with him. So I just wanted to kind of start with you and just give us, just a little bit about your story, and we'll just kind of pop in with some questions as we go.
Okay, well, I want to just thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm just very honored and humbled that you would have me. So yeah, I grew up in a household with 4 older siblings and 2 parents that drank too much. I don't think they really liked each other. We were in a really cramped small house, and when you grow up with 2 parents that drink a lot, everything that goes with that. We had a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of abuse. We saw and heard and felt things that no children should ever be exposed to. And when alcohol really hit me was when I was 14 years old. My parents had separated, and Daddy had gone to some kind of rehab hospital. I was 14 and just, a young girl. And the night of one of my sister's birthday, my sister Linda's birthday, he had come over and we were having a big birthday celebration, and they announced that they were getting back together and that Daddy was moving home the next day. That was awesome. But what it meant for me, Daddy was the parent that loved me. No disrespect to my mom, both of my parents are deceased. And you know what? They did the best they could with the tools they had, which were not many back then. But Daddy was the parent that loved me. My mom had 3 daughters. She finally had the son. Well, the last thing she needed or wanted was another kid. Well, here I come. So I don't blame her in hindsight as an adult now. I don't blame her for not really attaching to me as a mother should, but it really, really impacted me very greatly. So we were all excited, and the next day we get a knock at the door, and it was my aunt. And she asked if I was the only one home, and I said, well, no, I think one of my sisters is upstairs. And she came in and she just said, your daddy's dead. And I just immediately went to the living room and started vacuuming again. I didn't realize at the time I was in a really big state of denial. What happened, Amy, is that when my parents were separated, my dad lived with my grandmother, or at my grandmother's house. She was deceased, but he lived at my grandmother's house with his brother. Well, my uncle was drunk and shot my dad, left my dad bleeding to death in the closet, called his other brother and told him what had happened. And back then there wasn't DNA, there wasn't CSI, there wasn't anything. And what they told the police officers was that my dad had killed himself. Well, first of all, that made no sense because Daddy was moving home. He was packing his suitcase to move home. And the coroner's report said something about gun blast residue. That anyway, that's what happened. That's the bottom line. That's what
the story wasn't. I mean, you know what the story actually was.
Yeah. And so that night was the first time I ever had anything to drink. My oldest sister, who was married at the time, she came home, picked me up, and took me to her house and gave me Jack Daniels and Coke. I was 14 years old, but you know what? She did the best she could. When you grow up and that's what you see. Children model what they see. Mm-hmm. That's what she knew to do. And then a few days later, some friends of mine took me to a concert and just gave me tons of beer. And so I realized alcohol was a way to numb out my feelings. And it was quite the anesthetic, believe me. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, from the get-go, you were giving alcohol a job. Like, it wasn't just dabbling for funsies. You were like, it had a job to kill the pain from the first drink, right?
Yes. But you know what's, it wasn't like I drank every day from the time I was 14. Mm-hmm. That was my introduction. I was raised around it. But the first time it really had an impact that I felt was when my dad, was shot and killed by his drunk uncle. And, I can remember times Daddy would come home drunk and he would try and choke my mom to death, and strangle her. And my brother would hop on Daddy's back and Daddy would just, with one fell swoop, throw my brother against the wall. And, we were scampering around like puppies, scared and crying. And somebody would call one of my other uncles and he would come faithfully in the middle of 1, 2 in the morning, pick us all up. It was so incredibly embarrassing and so full of shame to go to my cousin's house in the middle of the night again, wake them up again. Where are we going to sleep? Oh, this, it was not good. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say my childhood, the entire childhood was horrible, but it was not anything I would wish on anybody. I will put it that way.
Yeah.
And then yeah. And so as I grew older, I went to college, and I this is hard to talk about. I'll just go really briefly. I was raped the night of my 19th birthday. I was a virgin at the time. That was even back then, I'm 65 now, but back then that was even a commodity. Um, the guy had a birthday party for me. Everybody was drinking. I was drinking too. But I really think that he put something in my drink because I had never felt I felt truly drugged in every sense of the word. And I went from one moment having laughing and dancing and having a good time, and the next thing I knew, he was on top of me, pulling off my clothes and just, I asked him if we were doing it, and he just laughed, and it was awful. And so the next morning, I didn't tell anybody for 20 or 25 years. The next morning, I went to the clinic at the college because he had I'm getting a little mixed up here. Sorry, it's a long time ago, but
Sure.
we lived in the same apartment complex, and there was a day where I went over to his apartment, and he didn't answer the door, and I walked in because he lived with guys, and guys just never lock the door. I went up to his room, and the guy that raped me was having sex with another girl, and he looked up, saw me, see him, and kept on going. And that really did a number on me. And I checked myself into the clinic at the university for 3 weeks. And all I told him was I didn't feel good and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I certainly didn't tell my mom. Daddy was dead. I didn't tell any of my siblings because I was so ashamed. I thought I had, like any sexual assault victim, I thought that I had done something to deserve it. I did not deserve that. But
Oh,
the guy was in a lot of my classes, and I could not continue. I could not continue. So my only option was to move home with drunk mother. By this time, all of my siblings had left the house. I was the last one, and married two wrong guys. I'm going to try and speed this up.
oh yeah.
I married the first guy, my daughter's father, young, and that was my young and stupid marriage. Anything to get out of the house,
Sure.
that was it. That anything to get out of the house. And um, I divorced her dad before she was 2 years old because I thought if this is marriage, I don't want it, and I don't want her raised around it. And so,
How old were you at that point?
how old was I?
Yeah, when you got your
Um,
first divorce.
I was probably 25 or 26.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And but she was under 2 years old. I knew it wasn't going to last, and I had had a miscarriage. I didn't know that at the time. Um, but I divorced her dad, and then 4 years later, I meet this guy, total opposite. Nice looking, made lots of money, really smart, just. And so I thought, this is the guy. This is the man. Well, I would have been better off staying with husband number one. Okay, I will just say that. My second husband was who I call the mean one. I got in trouble if I did not drink beer at 10 in the morning. On the weekends, I got in trouble, and just I will leave it at that. I had to drink every night with him when he got home from work. Had to, because I would get in trouble. I would get in trouble. Ladies and gentlemen, would I ever get in trouble? But what's interesting is even as much as I was drinking at that time, and at that time I was 30 to 34, 35 years old, I was not addicted. I didn't even like drinking, but I kind of was forced. I kind of had to do it as long as I was married to this guy. And he had a lot of problems. And we all do. And But my daughter, the night of her 9th birthday, he hurt her. Nothing drastic. He didn't, it wasn't sexual or anything like that, but he hurt her. And, don't mess with my kid. Like,
Yeah.
what part of that do you not understand? And we moved out 3 days later. And fast forward, years go by. Yeah, I would drink, I'd go to parties and things like that. And but I was really I was so happy to be free, so thrilled to be divorced and freedom, and
Hmm.
so but drinking was just not a thing. It was never a thing. And years later, I meet my third husband, and I mean, Shazam, big time. And we dated for a year and a half, just an old-timey courtship. Um, we dated for a year and a half, and I can remember, praying to God, like, God, he's still here. If he's not the right one for me, take him out. Please don't hurt him. He's really nice, but he's still here. And
Yeah.
then he proposed. God, he proposed. This isn't funny anymore. Because I was just scared. I was scared, you
Sure.
guys.
But you
And
asked the right questions this time too. You
yes,
in the book, I remember reading like you like asked each other questions and answered them. And it was like really you were in that interview process with him. You were really
yes,
vetting him and seeing, is this really a person I want to be with? And I think,
absolutely. Yeah.
that to me, I thought that was very smart. And it was very similar. Sorry, Matt. To when Matt and I started dating, it was like, all right, hey, these are the things that I want in life. Where do you align with this? And I think that was really smart as well. And
Well, yeah, it was because I had been at the time I met him, I had been a single mom for almost 20 years. You know what? I owned my own house. I had the career change in my dreams. I was making good money. I was plugged in at church. I had more good friends, true good friends than anybody deserves. So, like, why have a man? No offense, Matt, but it's like, why? And the way I got the Match.com, which is how I met him, my sisters bought me a membership, and they just couldn't understand how I could be happy without a man and on my own. And anyway, so I got married, and it was an old-timey courtship. So when I got married, I sold my house, moved in with my husband, only to discover he snores really loud.
yeah, and I want to because you're going to talk about your insomnia.
Well, let's
And
talk about the insomnia.
yeah, because I want to
Um,
say that is something that um really was probably that this is the what started everything.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry I didn't mention how I got the insomnia. I had started by the time I met Preston, my husband, I had had insomnia for 8.5 years. I mentioned earlier I had the career change in my dreams, which was to travel and write full time for a living. I could not believe I got paid to travel, meet new people, learn new stuff, ask questions, be nosy, get to go home, write about it, and get paid for it. Like, who would not want to have that for a job? It was the blast. I covered the oil and gas industry, and pipelines I loved writing about pipelines. Anyway, but I loved,
Right.
I loved writing so much. And during that, I have to tell this part. During that 20 years as a single mom, I went through two separate 2-year layoffs, all while as a single mom. 2 years, 8 years apart. You can't go through something like that and have all of your needs met and not come to believe that there is a God that does love you and does care about you. Nothing else could make sense how my needs were being provided. Well, during my second layoff, my mom came to town. She had remarried a guy, and they had moved to a small town in Tennessee called Fayetteville. She had come into town one year for Mother's Day, and she spent time with each one of us kids. And while she was here, she decided to go to her cardiologist because, the medical center of Houston, Texas is going to be a whole lot better than Fayetteville, Tennessee, a little podunk town, right? Well, she ended up having to have emergency heart surgery. It was totally a God ordained thing that she had that presence of mind. Well, mistakes were made. She ended up in a coma for 10 days and she died. It was horrible. It was unexpected. It was unnecessary. It was a case of medical negligence. Well, I went from covering pipelines to healthcare. Again, God intervened in me. I'm a woman of faith, if you can't tell that by now. But I went to covering healthcare for a magazine for nurses, and I learned really quickly to forgive those, not only the nurses, but the doctors, everybody that was involved in my mom's care. Nobody goes into healthcare to hurt someone. I get that. But it was just one more thing that I had gone through, and I wasn't drinking. Isn't that just, it's crazy. All these things I'd gone through, I never drank to numb out. I drank in my second marriage because I had to, as long as I was married to that guy. But anyway, let's see, where was I? I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. Where was I?
You're fine. You're fine. You're talking about your mother had passed away.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so I get this job in healthcare. I really, really wanted this job. And I worked from home. The company was located in the Northeast. And I loved this job so much. I would get up in the middle of the night, walk down the hall to my home office, and be emailing my boss all night long. I was a regional editor of this magazine, and what that means is I was responsible for coming up with story ideas, who to interview, what were we going to talk about, things like that. It was somebody in my field. It's just a dream job, and she loved it. I mean, she was just thrilled that I was coming up with all these super ideas. But my mind just turned on and it never stopped. It was just like this. Even when I wasn't working, I was working. If that's how it was, just nuts. So back to I get married, and my husband is snoring, and this is so not good. And I ran into a friend of mine from high school. At the mall. She was in town on business. We hadn't seen each other in like forever. And so, of course, we had dinner, and I was telling her how married life was after being single for so long. But here's this problem, and he snores. And she said, "Oh, well, have a glass of wine. That'll help you relax and go to sleep." Well, drinking was such a non-thing for me that it never occurred to me to use alcohol for the drug that we know it is to help me fall asleep. It just never entered my mind, but I was so desperate. I talked to Preston about it, and he said, "Well, sure, go ahead." Well, I drank the wine. It did relax me. It did help me fall asleep. And I would say within a week, the addiction took hold. I literally felt something was wrong with my brain. My brain had changed. I actually I went to his home office and told him one night, "My brain has changed." I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how I know, but I'm just telling you, something is wrong with my brain. And he's like, "Okay, well, whatever." What he didn't we slept in separate bedrooms at this point because I had to be able to sleep. So, alcohol, it's a depressant and a stimulant, and it will wake you up. At first it depresses you and it helps you fall asleep, all right, but then the stress hormones wake you up in the middle of the night. Well, I would just drink again. And it was truly like I have a bad cough. It was truly like taking a cough drop, like taking an aspirin. I would just have another drink, fall back asleep, wake up, have another drink. And this went on for years, you guys. I would call myself a closet drinker. Preston never knew how much I was drinking. He never knew. Why is that? Because I was really good at hiding the wine bottles in my super cute black and white polka dot rain boots in my closet. And he would go off to work. I would take this is the sickness I was in. You got I would take pictures of the empty wine bottles with the label. He would go to work. I didn't feel comfortable putting the wine bottles in the recycling bin just in case he went to the recycling bin when he was throwing out some paper or something. I would put the wine bottles in a plastic Walmart bottle bag, tie the bag up, put it in my car, and hide it under my seat to make sure, when he's in the garage, he doesn't see. I mean, the paranoia. Can y'all relate? The paranoia I had. Then I would, of course, as soon as he went to work and it was, 9 or 10 in the morning, whatever, I would just get my plastic bag of trash and put it in the trash can at Walmart while I went inside to go shop. But I would oftentimes, he has a photographic memory. So a lot of times I had to get the exact wine bottle, the exact label, because he would remember. And I was hiding. I was terrified that he would discover how much I was drinking. And
how much were you drinking during that time? Like to go to sleep, how many glasses of wine and
when the addiction first started, it was probably a bottle a night.
Okay.
I wasn't counting because I was just, this is working. He's helping me fall asleep. That's all I did. This is working. This is working. I would hide the empty bottles under my pillow. I mean, just so sick, so just truly a stranglehold. And at some point, I told him again, I think I'm drinking too much. Would you please put a lock on the wine refrigerator and the teak liquor cabinet? And man, my husband is a man that likes the finer things in life, and he did not want to drill a hole in that teak liquor cabinet. But he loves me, and he did. And but like any good drunk, in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep, I would get a paper clip and pick the lock. I mean, how sick, you guys. I would pick the lock, and then I would get into the hard whiskey. When I say hard whiskey, I mean whiskey straight up, not a little shot glass, not even a little water glass like you take medicine. Oh no, my friend, I would take, a milk glass, fill it with whiskey, and I would sip on it in the middle of the night and just enough to get me to go to sleep. Wake up, drink more, wake up, drink more. And that is no way to live. That is no way to live.
Well, and the quality, you may have been sleeping, quote unquote, but the quality of your sleep had to have been a train wreck, right? I mean, you're waking up still, going back to sleep, you're adding the alcohol to the whole thing. I mean, it had to have been a mess of, you've been almost better off not sleeping in some cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you have to be able to sleep. You have to be able to sleep. And so he would excuse me, I have to drink cough drop. At some point he started working from home, and his home office was upstairs, and I would go through the same thing, except instead of a wine, it was the whiskey bottles. And that is when I really started feeling like a true drunk. I know I don't use the word alcoholic because that's just not that I'm not an alcoholic, but as you know from reading my book, I had a really bad accident as a result of drinking straight whiskey and taking an Ambien. I was alone at our vacation home while he was out of town on a business. And that's all I'm going to say about the accident, because it turned my stomach.
It's pretty intense. It's pretty intense. And I want to just say that that it really truly is that you're here is really is by the grace of God that you're here because you went through a massive blood loss, drove yourself to the hospital clinic, and then they had to transport you to another hospital. And that really was was a rock bottom for you. That where am I at? What am I going to do?
Yeah,
And
but
no recollection from what had happened.
no. Um, but clearly, Amy, it wasn't rocky enough, right? Because I just still, once I recovered from, let's just call them the injuries, I still thought I could moderate.
Yeah.
I tried AA, nothing against AA. I know it works for a lot of people. I tried Celebrate Recovery. I really thought that was, that's a Christian-based program. They just didn't work for me. They just didn't work for me. And I make no apology. I didn't make myself.
Well, it was such an innocent thing that, like you were, the suggestion, the
Yeah.
innocent suggestion by the friend who doesn't know, and it does work. I mean, alcohol does put you to sleep. I mean, it doesn't keep you asleep. And that's what set you down this really rocky road. And then you get to a point where you have tried the AA, you've tried Celebrate Recovery. What are some of the other things that you tried, and what ultimately was the thing that finally was that point where you really started like, oh, I'm on the track? Because people don't understand. I feel like alcohol is always the thing that we are supposed to quit perfectly. If this declaration's made, or I'm an alcoholic, or I'm going to get myself in treatment, or I'm going to take a break, whatever it is. But then we are expected as individuals to do this perfectly. We are to quit and never drink again. And for most people, that is the biggest lie in the world. It doesn't happen like that for most people. Most people, I struggled often. I mean, I struggled for like 7 to 8 years, better part of a decade of I could go for weeks at a time and not drink. And then you would have this, it was like Russian roulette. And then all of a sudden you drank too much. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to cut back. And then it would kind of gear back up and then you quit again. But it takes time for people to figure this out. And so what was that process for you?
Well, I read a lot of quit-lit books. I read a lot of books on recovery. The first book that really flipped a switch for me was Annie Grace's This Naked Mind. I remember I was in Germany at the time taking care of my daughter and granddaughter, and son-in-law. She was pregnant, getting ready to have our grandson, and that was a really stressful situation. Super, super stressful. I will not go into that. But I was drinking then. After they went to bed, I was drinking. And I don't remember. This was back when Annie very first published the book, before it was picked up by the publisher. And when I saw the title, it has, she's very clever. She has a really clever title. I downloaded it on my Kindle and I really started to have hope. What that book did for me was help, to some degree, it helped alleviate the shame, the self-loathing, and the disgust and the guilt I felt. Once you learn what alcohol really is, how addictions are formed, how it affects the brain, it's not a moral issue at all. People don't understand that, but I read her book several times. I did several of her alcohol experiments. I did a program by a lady named Rachel Hart called Take a Break. I started listening to podcasts. Podcasts were a new thing to me. Of course, I've been writing since the day I was born. So like I've got journals from when I was 14. I was journaling a lot. I did talk to my doctor, but I didn't tell her the whole truth of how much I was drinking. I told her about the insomnia, and I worked with 3 doctors simultaneously for a year and a half to crack the code of this brain to where I don't have to drink alcohol anymore. A year and a half, I had a board certified sleep specialist. I had a cognitive behavior therapist specializing in insomnia. And then, of course, my primary care doctor. And so it was like a tag team. They all 3 knew what each of them was recommending, what the results were. Everybody, it was a symphony of dedicated healthcare professionals that recognized I really had a screwed up brain with this insomnia stuff. And so knocking the insomnia out, getting that under control was a big part of me being able to start working on getting rid of alcohol. I saw a regular therapist for a long time, and then she resigned from the healthcare system to work with the veterans. So in one of the podcasts, I learned a therapy, EMDR. It's like electronic. Just Google it, EMDR. I really don't understand how it works, but it helped me. It helps you deal with childhood trauma. It helped me with my childhood, but then it also helped with the rape when I was 19, and just all of the guilt and the shame, all of the things I had been through. I tried, there's something called emotional freedom technique, EFT, which is tapping. That didn't help me, but it has helped quite a few of my friends. I tried naltrexone. Naltrexone is a prescription medication that's meant to curb the chemicals in your brain that, when you drink and you get the buzz. Naltrexone kills the buzz. So theoretically, you're not going to drink as much because you're not getting a buzz. Well, I'm an expert drinker. All it did was make me drink more because I wanted the dang buzz.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, in my defense, I will say to you, everything I tried, I was seeing longer and longer periods of abstinence. So I was making progress. What was it? There was finally a time. I am a woman of faith, and I've been a member of our church since 1999. I have a lot of friends there, a lot of pastor friends. But it was really sad because the one place I felt like I could get help or should be able to go to get help, that was the last place I went. And I think the reason for that, Amy and Matt, is because when was the last time I've ever heard any of my pastors talk about alcohol and addiction from the pulpit? Like never. But I was at the point, all of the things I did, Annie Grace mentions the addictive brain course, DVD course by Professor Ted Polk. I did that. I mean, I did the 30-day sobriety solution, which is an online program. I did. Annie has a program called The Path. I did that last July. That has been a very big part of my success, my stop and stayed stopped success. The people in my Himalayas group that's the name of the Path group, have been phenomenal. We stay in touch every day. We have daily Zoom calls. In fact, I host the ones on Saturday. We have a Marco Polo group. We have a group. It's called the Band app. It's like Facebook, but it's called Band. But when I finally broke down and called one of my pastor friends and confessed to him, he said, Paulette, I've been clean as sober for 20 years. I mean, can you just
Mm-hmm.
like a balloon deflating, the shame just fell off. And so he put me in touch with a biblical counselor. And I worked with her for a little over a year. And the book we went through was called The Heart of Addiction by Mark Shaw. He has an accompanying workbook. And from a Christian perspective, that was the final thing that when I recognized that I had broken God's heart, I hadn't considered it at all from his perspective. That's how far away from God I had fallen. And I don't know, that book really cracked me open wide. And between that book and the path and the friends I've made on the path, there was an evening last year. Something happened privately between God and I, and it was a very strange experience. It was all I know is I just heard it's finished. She's mine. She's mine. And I haven't had a drink since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So really, it's kind of been a culmination of all of these different things that you've been doing. And then finally, you had that surrender moment. And now you're still doing it. And you wrote that book. And
Yeah.
the book you poured out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, how quick did you write this book? Because it's not been out long.
No, it took me about 2 months to write.
And you're self-published,
Mm-hmm.
and you can find it out on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there. So that's great. And now you're committing yourself to helping other people
Absolutely.
on this
And
journey.
can I say something that's really fascinating that I discovered to me is fascinating as part of my research for the book? You know, God made me to have a really analytical, inquisitive mind, much like Annie Grace. I don't believe something just because I read it. I have to go and dig and dig and dig and do more digging. And I learned so much about the science behind how alcohol works and how addictions get formed. And your brain literally rewires through a process called neuroplasticity. Well, through repetitive habits. And that way, the more you do something, you don't even think about it, you just do it. And that was what drove me crazy, is I would go for months without drinking. And I'm drinking. Like, have you ever had that experience? Like, how is this? I wasn't even thinking about, I'm not upset. Nothing's bothering me. How did this even happen? It's just the neuroplasticity. It's a habit loop that you don't even think about. Well, the great news is when you form new habits, your brain rewires in a different way, through homeostasis, and it balances out. Well, that's neuroplasticity. That's the science part. So I go to my Bible. Here's my Bible right here. So I'm reading and I'm doing the work, The Heart of Addiction, and learning. And the Apostle Paul talks about transforming and renewing your mind from the inside out. So that's the spiritual. Here's neuroplasticity. Here's renewing your mind from the inside out. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
science, spirituality. I just thought that is just so dang cool.
Yeah. It's amazing how many things they talk about in the Bible that is, we're supposed to take our thoughts captive.
Yep.
Because thoughts become things,
Yep.
and you have to, I mean, I was almost 52 years old before I realized that the things I was thinking are not true,
Yeah.
and that I could talk back to those thoughts and tell those thoughts that's not true.
Yeah.
And
And yeah. One of the things I also want to point out is, I was not clearly, I was not modeled healthy coping mechanism. I was not modeled healthy relationships. So part of becoming alcohol free was doing all that therapy, learning. I basically learned how to reparent myself.
Mhm.
And that sounds really goofy, but my therapist, she recommended that I find a picture of myself when I was a little girl and put it, nearby where I could look at myself as a child. So when life happens, uncomfortable things do happen, and I would find myself getting upset or nervous or anxious or whatever. I could look at the picture of myself and be like, "You're okay. You're 65
Mhm.
years old. You've lived through so much. We can do this. I'm going to take care of you."
Yep.
And I would learn to ask myself, what do I need right now? And I would give it to myself. And it, I don't know why that was so helpful, but I guess because my dad was killed when I was so young, and my mom she didn't love me. I mean, she didn't. There was something that happened when I was in my 40s that it was a very bad event between my mom and and I ended up telling her everything, everything, including the rape, how I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't, why I really quit school, all these things. And I had written her this really long letter. And that's the beauty of having journals from when you were 14 years old. I could go back, and as part of
Mhm.
writing the book, I could go back to my journals and read and just see, you know, I learned to have such compassion on myself,
Yeah. And you also
and
learn to have compassion for her too. And you
uh,
guys
absolutely.
ultimately healed your relationship.
We sure did. We sure did. That cataclysmic moment had to happen. And I wrote her this letter and said everything I ever wanted to say. And I said, I asked her at the end, I did say, Mom, I still love you, but I need you to really leave me alone. That means no calls. That means no text. Do not knock on my door. Do not manipulate my siblings and have them call me, because I mean, that's how she was. God love her. It took about 3 weeks, but we did ultimately reconcile. And I am so glad, because
Yeah.
the last few years of her life, we really had a nice relationship.
Yeah. It's
And
so
that
good.
made her untimely death so much all the more devastating. But I'm so grateful that I reconciled with her.
I'm glad. That's great. And we could talk forever. But we are so happy that you were able to come on here. How can we direct people to you?
Oh, thank you. I have a website, spirit-led-sobriety.com. I'm on Instagram at Spirit-Led Sobriety 22.
Okay.
I also have a Facebook community that I just started 2 days ago, Spirit-Led Sobriety. It's publicly visible, but you have to request to join. So
Yeah.
only people that are members can see what the posts are. Nobody
Yeah.
could just open up that group and see
Sure.
who's a member and what people are saying. So it's publicly available, but you have to request to join, and
Awesome.
it's taking off pretty well.
Good. Well, we are going to put all the links and everything um, in the posts in the show notes. So if they're, well, I don't know. I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of the Alcohol-Free Marriage and More podcast. And hopefully this story, I don't think hopefully, I know someone is going to be touched by it. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you so much. And we hope that we can send some people your way.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Paulette, for being on the Alcohol-Free Marriage and More podcast.
Yeah.
First off, anybody who writes a book is just amazing to me. Just I barely can write a paper, let alone a book.
And she wrote it so fast. I think
Yeah.
within like 4 months or something.
Yeah.
It was very quick.
But her alcohol journey is very different than any that I've come
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
in our 60-some episodes. So,
yeah. So I want to just say also that you can find her at spirit-led-sobriety.com. And her book, Spirit-Led Sobriety, is also available on Amazon now. And we'll have links to the socials as well in the show notes. And again, I just feel like we love bringing you stories, different stories, a wide variety, because everybody is, nobody, I guess, is immune from alcohol and what it can do. So
that is true, kids. All right. Well, yeah, add Spirit-Led Sobriety to your sober library, if you will.
Yeah.
Or just your regular library, that's fine. So, but anyway. All right, kids, that's it for us for this week. Hope you enjoyed the interview and the podcast. We'll check you out next week. I'm Matt, along with Coach Amy, wishing you peace and love from the cornfields. And we are
out.